My peeps, I want to talk a little bit today about something that I have always heard from Republican type folks, and that is uh, individual responsibility. Individual responsibility. Now, this is a really, really great topic I love to discuss. And I recently did some research about our country and the fact that we are a republic, and that is how we get people who call themselves Republicans. So I imagine that the original Republicans, who were people that believed in a republic, which we'll define here in a second, Republican people, I imagine, started off with good intentions of individual responsibility, and that if was practiced by everybody in the society, then there would be no need for, excuse me, no need for high taxes to pay for things like police, judges, jails, things of that nature. If everyone was their own police, their own judge, their own jailer even, people would be taking more personal responsibility to not do things that really others in society deem is not good for the whole of society. Right? So personal responsibility is something that everyone absolutely believes in. And the problem in the United States with personal responsibility is that the people cannot say that you can take that everyone should take personal responsibility, but yet at the same time remove the ability for people to have individual freedom, individual liberty for themselves and what they wish to do for themselves. So an example of this is when backroom deals are made that says that there's no way in heck we're going to have a certain race of people work at this establishment, right? And we know that happens everywhere. There's signs up in all businesses that say we reserve the right to refuse anyone that we don't like. So when that is the case, when that is accepted in society, there is no possible way. You're removing the ability for people to act with personal responsibility. You've now made it a situation where you preach personal responsibility, but in backroom deals, behind the scenes, behind where people can see, you actually are trying to remove and erode the people's ability to actually exercise that personal freedom, personal responsibility. So what has to happen is to people that live in a republic, and I'd like to now define what I have found out recently about a republic and about the way that certain countries in the world govern themselves. A republic is defined as a way of governing in which there is usually documentation, like founding documentation, like we have our 10 amendments and we have our constitution. Right? Most countries will have a constitution of some sort. And in a republic, there are representatives that are voted on to uphold that said constitution. And democracy plays into this because we will vote on those representatives. Now, in a pure republic, the people that we put into office will make the laws. We will not directly vote on the laws. Now, contrary to this, in a pure democracy, people would vote for not only the elected officials to uphold that said constitution, but they would also vote on all of the laws and the majority would rule, and that's a pure democracy. So what we have going on here is we are a democratic republic, like the Democratic Republic of Congo. We are a democratic republic. So that being said, I have now understood the history of why there are people who call themselves Republican. These are people who believe in the republic, which is a place where individual freedom is found by not limiting people's freedom, not making them dependent on other organizations, but having them be dependent on themselves and by themselves through their personal responsibility. So I say this, when the society can provide all of the avenues that are equal to everyone to have the same job opportunities, education opportunities, then we can talk about individual responsibility because you've now leveled the playing field. We all know, in fact, that, however, in backroom deals for the existence of this country, there have been people who hate other races and will never let them work at their places of business. That has got to go if you are to expect a society that will no longer require police, judges, and jails because people exercise personal responsibility. I am so for personal responsibility. I am absolutely 100% personal responsibility. I don't want anyone to have to depend on anything at all, because if that's ever taken away, they have no way to support themselves or take care of themselves. And that is ludicrous. That is ludicrous. In the history of mankind's existence of some 20,000 years, man has gone out and hunted and gathered food in terms of hunting, and the woman has traditionally gathered food in terms of gardening. You know, I mean, it's tried and true. It's how we survived to get to this point. So I'm sick and tired of everyone talking about starvation and so afraid and this and that. It's ridiculous. So what we need is to absolutely go back to 100% individual responsibility, but only under the premise that everyone has this access, equal access to the same opportunities. And this is the one thing that I do not appreciate about Republicans of the modern day. They do not understand this concept that I'm talking about. And I believe that the original Republicans that first started this republic did not have the intention of reducing constantly the benefits to employees, or even further beyond that, sending their jobs to other countries. Like, I seriously doubt the original Republicans believed in eroding people's abilities to have employment for themselves to follow personal responsibility. So I wish to see human rights being stimulated in this country by said Republicans who wish to see the society flourish in economic terms through personal individual responsibilities. Now imagine if the businesses, small businesses and large, didn't have to pay for medical insurance for employees. Imagine society wasn't burdened with the price of jails, police, and judges who take so much money, attorneys. It's such a waste of money in society. Republicans are always quick to tell me or to ask me, where does the money come from to pay for nationalized health care? I say, number one, get rid of corruption. That's the number one source. Number two, you could quit paying for a huge military in peacetime. I mean, those are just some of the ways. So there really has to be a time where we go back to respecting one another's parties, because we all have to work together to make a better place. I mean, all the squabbling between these parties is making this place a place that no one really wants to be and nobody can even survive in. So individual responsibility, absolutely. But in this country, it must be on a level playing field. When you send jobs to other countries, when you import foreigners to work, when you do not wish to employ your own Americans, how can you run around talking about everyone needs to have personal responsibility? If you force people into having to steal bread to survive for their families, you have reduced and eroded and taken away their ability to exercise their personal responsibility, the same one that would allow for us not having to spend on judges, lawyers, attorneys, you know, even the war machine, all of that stuff. If we all just could participate in personal responsibility, would go away. And that's such a huge, huge part of the American budget. So I say to my Republican friends who wish to always ask me, where are the resources going to come from? There are avenues. but they have to go back to responsibility, personal responsibility, a respect between business owners and their employees. Employees always have immense respect for their employers. They want to keep their job and feed their family, so they do whatever they have to, even walk into COVID if they need to, which is horrible. But employers frequently wish to erode time off, paid time off, medical benefits, all these things that the employees need to survive. So there's got to be a meeting of the minds, a respect between both, and that will unify the parties. I believe that Republicans can certainly go back to the way that it used to be when they first started the party. And I believe that their intentions originally were not impure. I believe that they were pure, depending on basically on personal freedoms and people taking personal responsibilities, but with an open playing field. And I think that's been hijacked somewhere along the line. And I think the Republican Party probably needs to get that back, needs to take that hijackers out, whether it was the racists that hijacked their party or the whoever. They need to go back to being pure in their original ideologies. And I think that's what started this country. It's what most people would respect and vote for, but there has to be a eradication of any racist behavior. There simply cannot be hate for the sake of hate. For everyone to be able to practice personal responsibility, everyone has got to respect one another as a person that is exercising their personal responsibility and give respect to one another as individuals exercising our personal responsibilities. But that only comes when we can assume that one another is doing exactly all we can for each other's interest as well as our own. That's the only way this works. And when there's racist tendencies in the society to hate people for any reason whatsoever, you are not allowing for a level playing field for all of the wonderful divine spirits of this country to do the best that they possibly can. Quite honestly, Republicans in your economy, how many employees do you tell, do what you want, do what it is you are good at, come bring to the economy, and I will have an open job for you to do what it is you want to do? Frequently, I've always had to hear from Republicans, I have a job that maybe I have a job, if you're lucky, if I don't ship it to another country, where you can sweep floors, but that's all you have to do here. That's ridiculous. That's not allowing people for their own personal individual responsibility to go out and make the top dollar that they can from the God-given abilities endowed to them. So these are some of the things that must change if anyone is ever going to listen to Republicans talk about individual responsibility. We all quest for individual responsibility. I'll say recently with the events in Minnesota, where was the individual responsibility of the police officer to remove his foot from the neck of that poor Floyd fellow? Are you kidding me? Really? So when we talk about personal responsibility, when the police department wants to sit up there and say how they have nothing but the interest of the people in mind, why was that not in the mind of those officers who put that man to the pavement until he died? That's not taking personal responsibility. And when the police act in this way, you are never going to have a populace that can exercise their personal responsibility. At that point, everyone has to be their own police to defend themselves from the police. And a house divided will never stand that way. I wish any Republican who ever has any ideas, which I have always heard to be half-baked and ridiculous through my whole life, to actually debate me publicly, and let's take these ideas to the furthest that we can. Certainly not to show anyone that is ridiculous or doing the wrong thing, but to say, let's get back to the individual responsibility conversation that I am certain was at the forefront of the four founding fathers' minds when they were thinking in a pure way compared to as today, which is completely not a pure way. Maybe I'm wrong, and maybe even back in the day it was not a pure way of thinking. I don't know, but I think it's got to be more pure than it is right now. There's got to be more respect. There's got to be a level playing field, and then we all get to participate in individual responsibility, meaning there is no injustice. As long as injustice is allowed to continue this way, you have a requirement to pay massive money for attorneys, for judges, for police. So I say stop the madness. Everyone practice individual responsibility. That entails a lot. It entails living by the truth, which not a lot of folks can do. So be your own doctor, be your own politician, be your own police, be your own everything right now, because it's like this. When you want something done right, you got to do it yourself.